Hello and welcome to the Blue Pencil Sessions. This is where we take a look at some of your manuscript pages and have a chance to give you our thoughts. I'm Eileen. I'm here today with Crystal and Donna, and we are having a chance to look over Bruce's pages. Now, this does jump us into the middle of his story, and he is writing about some mysteries of the Bible. And I'm just going to open with saying it's very clear to me that Bruce has done his homework. I went to Catholic school for 12 years, so I feel like I know some of these Bible stories. But what's crystal clear is this is something you have well studied and you know the details about that, and that really comes through. Your sort of knowledge base and all of that. And I think it's also just an interesting conception.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to take us over to Donna to talk about point of view, which was something I think a few of us did struggle with.
A few being, yeah, it was interesting. So Bruce, one of the things I felt when being dropped into the middle or not knowing what the context is, take, what I'm saying, I appreciate that I don't know what came right before. But it left me wondering, so point of view, Joshua, we start with Joshua here and his men jumped on the horses. So I'm assuming that I'm going to see the story from Joshua's point of view and be inside Joshua's head for this chapter, for this section. And there were parts as we got out of, Joshua and his men escaping. Now we're with Og's men and his horses. And so I'm not sure where the point of view is. And it was an interesting thing with Crystal and Eileen. In fact, I interpreted that, first of all, I think all three of us thought that Og was there with the men. So that was one of those things. Maybe we would have known that Og wasn't there, but we all assumed that, Og was there with his men. And then so it became a little bit confusing later when Og was being approached and is clearly clearly to me, sitting in a tent, and somebody was then reporting back on what had happened. And that character isn't well enough to find. I can't see what that person's name is. Oh, there it is.
It's the captain, isn't it?
Yeah, and is it he the nameless captain? Anyway, the point is there were three important characters here, and I was never sure who I should be following, or I never felt. So that was just that was a bit of a bump for me to be able to follow along and feel like the story was really interesting. And I was like, he cut his head off. Okay, this is a different time and place, right? But so there was that action. That action I thought was quite compelling in these pages. But I just wanted to be connected a little bit more to the characters and know where I was in the story.
And I can give you an exact example because I was scrolling through as Donna was talking, is we have the captain, which I quite liked. He's talking about his breathing was difficult. He couldn't get enough oxygen. He feels dizzy. That means I'm in his point of view. And then just a couple paragraphs later, we have Og grinds his teeth and twitches as he let what he heard sink in. The headache that started when his prisoners got away is now as hot searing. So all of a sudden now I'm in Og's head. And then that's confusing for the reader, or you'll hear it called head hopping. And it also has an emotional impact, which I think, Crystal, you can speak to.
Yeah, so one of the things that stuck out for me was the second half, you are much more in the characters, and the first half is like watching a scene from a movie at a distance. So in terms of the progression of the scene, that we start really far away and we're looking at, like, the descriptions are, they all kept their bodies down low towards their mount's neck, eliminating as much wind resistance as they could. And the 35 pagan predators racing toward them were sitting high on their horses. But you're describing each group as though they are an entity. So kind of like in my mind, I'm picturing, this flock of birds moving all the same. But in reality, there's going to be some differences. And it's not as emotionally immediate when we're thinking of a group of people. So if you are able to drill down into someone's point of view for that beginning half of the scene, that would let us be in their thoughts. We can be thinking, what are they worried about? What do they smell? There's not a lot of sensory detail in that first half either. And so that would really bring it alive for us in that first bit, to have more opportunity for thought, because there's not a lot of dialogue in that beginning piece. It really is a lot of telling, and we really want to be shown through the characters' actions and experiences what's going on. So I think that's something that you shift towards at the end, but you don't do at the beginning of the scene. And so for consistency, it would feel good to have a little bit more of a deep dive into the characters and what's going on for them in the beginning.
And I think because there is such great action that's happening, like you really do have this immense action scene, but I want to be there sitting there with Joshua. Like I want to feel him feeling like he's almost off balance and feeling like he's about to pitch, right off the side of the horse, and, mud splattering on him, and
maybe yelling to Caleb or something. Like you've got the two characters there who I assume are pretty important in the story. Like there could be some interaction there to break that up too.
That
and
would
some
be
dialogue.
right.
It's a very silent battle scene. Like there's probably thundering horses and everything else, but people would be indicating to each other something, or shouting commands or whatever. It would be very unusual for it all to happen without dialogue.
And the last thing that I'm going to answer, probably with the sound of chainsaws in the background, because for whatever reason those have started, is because this is high action, there's a lot of places where you can make some trimming, which will make the piece read faster and more immediate. So I'm just going to bring a couple of examples to help you see them. So at the very beginning, they kept their bodies down low towards their mount's neck, eliminating as much wind resistance as they could. I would just cut that to they kept their bodies down low towards their mount's neck. I feel like we know why they're doing, like, I know nothing about horseback riding, and I picture people clutching down with that. So just eliminating that little bit of a line. Or for example, in the next sentences, they spread out, forming a web, whipping their horses with their leather reins they held in their hands. Because there's no other way to hold reins, like they're not going to hold them in their teeth as they're escaping. They're not going to hold them with their feet or any other random body part. So you don't need to have they had in their hands. Again, it seems like a simple thing, and it's not that it's incorrect, but it's making what the long sentence even longer. And if you shorten up some of those sentences, it will actually increase the pacing of the individual as they're reading. And then one other example of a way that you could just sort of trim is there's the thick dead oak tree that had fallen many years ago. So one, we don't need to know that detail. It doesn't add to the scene in a scene that is so high paced and so emotionally charged. Two, it does take us out of the point of view because neither Joshua or Caleb would have any idea when this tree fell. So it actually, again, pulls us out of that character's point of view. And you can imagine that if Joshua is in this escape scene, he's not thinking to himself, well, that tree sure looks like it's been down for a while. That takes away the stakes that you're doing such a job of building in there that work really well. But very interesting.
Little glitch with the others. You have to say that last thing again, Eileen. Very interesting.
Very interesting to see what else is missing from the Bible.
There we go.
There you go. And for anyone else, if you'd like us to take a look at your pages, please send them over to the Blue Pencil. If you have a query, feel free to send that over to me and I'll tackle it in office hours. Until then, we'll see you around the Academy. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks.